I invited him over just for dinner, but then everything changed. It's funny how ordinary evenings can turn into milestones in your life, how something you thought would be casual and unremarkable can shift the entire course of your heart. My name is Emily Carter, and I had no idea when I texted Daniel Thompson that morning that a simple dinner at my place would change everything I thought I knew about love, timing, and second chances. Daniel and I had known each other for a while, not as close friends, but in that vague space of casual acquaintances who sometimes bumped into each other. He worked at the same marketing firm as me, though in a different department, so most of our interactions were short and polite. He was always the kind of person who smiled when he passed you in the hallway, the kind of man who seemed to remember small details about people without even trying. I'd always thought he was kind, steady, and almost too composed for the chaos of our workplace. I admired him from a distance, but nothing about our connection suggested it could be anything more. The truth was, I'd been feeling a little lonely. I'd just turned 31, and though I had a good job, a nice apartment in Chicago, and friends who cared about me, something always felt missing. My last relationship had ended almost 2 years ago, and while I told myself I was fine, that I enjoyed my independence, sometimes evenings stretched too quietly. That morning at work, when Daniel stopped by my desk to ask about a project I'd been working on, I felt a spark of warmth just from his easy presence. Without really thinking it through, I heard myself saying, "Hey, I'm making dinner tonight at my place. Do you want to come over?" I didn't expect him to say yes. Maybe I was bracing for him to make an excuse about being busy or politely decline, but instead he looked at me with a smile that reached his eyes and said, "I'd love to." Just like that, it was settled. All day, I thought about it more than I should have. It wasn't a date, at least not officially, just dinner with a coworker, a friend, I told myself. But I still wanted to make everything nice. After work, I stopped by the market, picking up fresh ingredients and a bottle of red wine. I even fussed over what to wear, settling on something simple but soft, a cream-colored sweater and dark jeans that felt comfortable but still a little special. When the doorbell rang at 7, my stomach fluttered with nerves. I opened the door, and there was Daniel, standing in the hallway with a bottle of wine in his hand and that calm smile on his face. He wore a navy button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up casually, and I caught myself thinking he looked even better outside the fluorescent lights of the office. "Hey, Emily," he said warmly. "Thanks for inviting me." "Of course," I replied, stepping aside to let him in. "Come on in." The evening started easily. We opened the wine he brought, poured glasses, and I busied myself with cooking while he leaned against the counter, keeping me company. He asked questions about my family, my childhood, little things no one at work had ever asked before. I told him about growing up in Ohio, about how I used to dream of living in the city, and about how sometimes I still miss the quiet of small-town life. He shared stories about his younger brother, about hiking trips he loved to take, about his passion for photography that I'd never known about. As we sat down to eat, pasta with homemade sauce, garlic bread, and a simple salad, the conversation deepened in ways I didn't expect. He asked me about my dreams beyond work, what I wanted my life to look like 5 or 10 years from now. No one had asked me that in a long time. I admitted that I wanted more than just climbing a career ladder. I wanted meaning, connection, maybe even a family someday. He nodded thoughtfully and said he felt the same. Somewhere between the second glass of wine and the laughter that spilled out when I confessed how I once burned an entire batch of cookies in college, I realized how easy it felt to be with him. The kind of ease that doesn't happen often, the kind that feels like finding a rhythm you didn't know you were missing. After dinner, I made coffee and we sat on the couch. The city lights filtered softly through my window, and the air between us felt charged, though neither of us said it out loud. Daniel told me about his move to Chicago years ago, how he'd come with nothing but determination, how he'd struggled at first but learned to carve a life here. His honesty made me open up too. I admitted how sometimes I still questioned if I was truly happy, how I worried that time was slipping away without me figuring out the pieces of my life. He looked at me then, really looked, in a way that made my heart thud a little harder. "Emily," he said quietly, "you're one of the most genuine people I've met. You don't have to have everything figured out right now." His words landed gently but deeply, and I felt seen in a way that I hadn't for a long time. I didn't plan what happened next. It was just a small shift, the way I leaned slightly toward him, the way his hand brushed against mine on the couch. The world outside felt muted, as if the city and its noise had fallen away, leaving only the two of us in that quiet moment. And then he kissed me. It wasn't hurried or impulsive. It was soft, tentative, like he was giving me space to pull back if I wanted to. But I didn't. I leaned into it, my heart racing, my hands trembling slightly as I let myself feel something I hadn't in a long time. When we pulled back, breathless, there was a silence between us, not awkward, but full of unspoken recognition that something had changed. "I didn't mean for tonight to be more than dinner," I whispered, almost apologetic. "Neither did I," he admitted, his voice low. "But I'm glad it is." From that moment, the evening carried a different kind of energy. We talked more, laughed more, but now everything had a layer of intimacy beneath it. He stayed later than I expected, and when he finally stood to leave, there was a reluctance in both of us. At the door, he paused, looking at me with a softness that made my chest ache. "Emily," he said gently, "I don't want this to just be a one-time thing." I nodded, my throat tight. "Me neither." After he left, I leaned against the door, my heart racing with a mixture of excitement and fear. What had started as a simple dinner invitation had turned into something I hadn't expected but deeply wanted. The days and weeks that followed only deepened what had begun that night. We started spending more time together, coffee before work, walks in the park on weekends, late-night talks that stretched until dawn. He made me laugh in ways I hadn't in years, but he also listened when I spoke of my fears and insecurities. With him, I felt not only cared for but understood. Of course, it wasn't all effortless. There were moments of doubt, of wondering if we were moving too quickly, of navigating the line between coworkers and something more. But every time I looked at him, every time his hand found mine, I felt anchored in a certainty that this was worth it. Months later, as we stood together on the rooftop of his apartment, watching the city lights shimmer, he turned to me and said, "You know, it all started with you inviting me over for dinner." I laughed softly, leaning against him. "Best impulsive decision I've ever made." He smiled, pressing a kiss to my hair. "Me too."